question. Do we have a hand up? And oh.
What kind of a job do you think the press is doing reporting on the major issues of the day, aside from the partisan political back and forth? And let me just give you one example. We often hear that Medicare is described as a very efficient system because it has low administrative costs. And yet, in the next breath, we also hear that it's rife with massive fraud and abuse and erroneous payments, and it's going to go broke. Those two thoughts can't be held simultaneously. And why isn't the press doing a better job of pointing that out?
Well, I guess it's because the experts aren't doing a great job of coming to a conclusion. One of the problems we face in these sorts of issues is that there's no consensus in the field. And it's very hard as a journalist to figure out where the center of gravity is in any field of experts. And so I'll call up, I'm sure you have this experience, you call up 6 different healthcare economists. They tell you 6 different things. It's very hard to, and they all have some piece of the truth. And so it's phenomenally hard to cover fields where you're calling up experts and they differ because the fields are so complicated. I think on health, I think in general, the debate on healthcare was a pretty good debate. I think we all learned a lot about the healthcare system in the course of that debate. It had its death panel moments, of course. But I think in general it had people, I remember thinking this when they had that Blair House summit with the president and all the members. I thought that they were much more up to speed than they were a year before. So would I say it's perfect? No, but I do think on that issue, I think the press, to the extent you can generalize, did a reasonably decent job. And then I have to say this about my own newspaper. I think on Libya we've done and those sorts of issues we've done a phenomenal job. Every time I open my newspaper, and I have nothing to do with any of this, there's always some really excellent reporting that somebody's been doing. And NPR too. I think there are a number of tremendous outlets out there. It doesn't mean most of the people listen to this, but they're out there. I'm not nostalgic about the press of the 50s or 60s or 70s. I think the press is better now than ever before.
Let's bring a mic forward to Mitch Wallerstein here.
David, you mentioned earlier that you thought that Obama was guilty of excessive reliance on planning. Many in the media have also criticized him for not being, as is sometimes referred to, a closer, that he's good on proposing ideas and putting them forward, but doesn't seem to always be able to close the deal. Do you see that as related to being too worried about triangulation, or does he really not have the instinct for putting the hammer down when he needs to?
Well, I think within the administration there's some realization he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that Machiavellian inspire fear, which is sometimes necessary. But I generally don't understand. He is a proposer. There's no issue I've ever seen him confront where he didn't seek to transcend it and rise above the disputing parties. And that was started from the stimulus to health care, even to some of the foreign policy problems. The Middle East, it's always, I'm going to rise above and try to settle this. I think that's just naturally the way he thinks. But it means he's in some ways strangely passive. Even this budget thing. He gave a speech and he said, we're going to do cuts and here are my targets. And he said, in defense target, let's get a board of defense experts to figure out what to cut. Discretionary spending, here's my target. Let's have a commission figure out what to cut. Medicare, here's my target. Let's have another commission to figure out what to cut. He's never involved in the actual decision. It's a convening. And I do think that, I'm not sure why that is. At first I had a theory in the stimulus package why they gave so much power to Congress. My theory was they were having tremendous problem hiring people, which they were in the first 2 years. They refused to hire anybody who'd ever worked as a lobbyist, which was a big mistake because a lot of those people are really good and really knowledgeable. And second, they discovered that they had a great deal of trouble hiring because it turns out nobody in America pays their taxes. And so they would hire somebody and they'd say, would you like this job? And they'd say, yeah, I'd love that job. I have a little tax issue you should probably be aware of. And then they'd go to the next person, the same thing. And so they had a lot of trouble. So at first I thought it was just a staffing issue. But now I don't know. It's always it's his instinct to transcend.
But there would be at the end of the housing, at the end of the medical healthcare bill was something of an exception to that, and that the conventional wisdom was that it was time to usually scale back and compromise everything that they'd done for the previous year. And Obama was the guy who said, you know, he just lost the 40th Senate seat. He said, we're on the 2-yard line. It's time to ram the ball through on the goal line.
That's true.
And they did.
Yeah, he did do that, and there were other people, including his chief of staff, saying, let's settle for half a loaf.
Settle for Rahm Emanuel was very much.
And so he did, and there have been times when he's gotten on the phone and called members of Congress and said, let's do this. But there's still a I don't know, a delegation often, I think, compared to, say, Bill Clinton, who was much more, let's draw the lines on the map, let's sit here, let's do this, get into the details. Maybe that's a better way to run the administration, just be a convener, set the overall shape, and set it off. But it is an interesting contrast, especially with Clinton.
Well, David, this has been incredible fun, and it's great to talk with you for longer than the 6 minutes on the air on Friday, which we share with E.J. Dionne.
Yeah,
also.
E.J.'s hogging 5.5 of that.
He's a tough guy to battle for time with. Thanks for being with us. Congratulations on The Social Animal, and it's been fascinating.
Thank you, Robert.
Hi, Will Friedman from President of Public Agenda. I just want to thank Robert and David one more time. A great conversation. My Obama count has risen as I face the political season coming up. And thanks to the Maxwell School, our partners on these breakfasts, and the Public Agenda team for setting us up for this. We'd also like to invite you to our next breakfast. It's June 15th. Our guest will be former Ambassador Donald Gregg, currently the chairman of the Korea Society. He's has a distinguished career in foreign policy as a CIA officer, a member of the National Security Council, and ambassador to South Korea, and evidently was a model for a Tom Clancy character. So that'll be fun to probe as well. Thanks, everybody. We hope to see you in the future.